Dory Funk Jr., the son of Dory Funk and brother of Terry Funk, died on Tuesday at age 85. After playing college football at West Texas State, he wrestled across 6 decades, beginning his career with the National Wrestling Alliance, where he won the World's Heavyweight Championship in 1969 and held it for nearly 5 years, marking the second longest reign in the history of the title, before dropping it to Harley Race in the 1973 Match of the Year. Along with Terry, they are the only brothers to ever hold the championship. Dory simultaneously wrestled across the world with All Japan Pro Wrestling, where he spent most of his career. He also did a 1-year stint in the World Wrestling Federation, teaming with his brother at WrestleMania 2 against Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana. They reunited the Funks in 1994 when Dory made his debut with Eastern Championship Wrestling, soon, of course, to turn Extreme, for a memorable feud with Public Enemy. That was largely the end of his full-time career, though he wrestled on and off for another 30 years, making appearances in WCW and at the 1996 WWF Royal Rumble. Mick Foley teamed with the Funks against the Midnight Express in a Legends match, and Dory spent most of his time wrestling for his own promotion, the Funking Conservatory in Ocala, Florida, not far from the home of the Florida Gators. He trained a who's who of major main event wrestlers over the years, including the Hardy Boys, Kurt Angle, Lita, Mickie James, Edge and Christian, and Test. The Funks were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009. Dory never retired, despite saying as much multiple times, including in 2019. He ultimately made his last on-screen appearance at WWE's Saturday Night's Main Event in San Antonio, Texas, just last year. Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 923 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Friday, so you mostly know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week in NXT and AEW, but not only that, we will be touching on a bit of WWE news and breaking down week 2 of AAA Verano de Escandalo. There is plenty that happened on that show that you need to know, both for future WWE shows coming up and just because it's a great hour of wrestling television pretty much every week these days. Before we get into all of that, allow the Silver King off the top to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time and leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. On YouTube, you can listen to the show. You can watch full-length video interviews. You can also hit the link on our social media profiles to join our completely free Slack channel and discuss wrestling all week long with other Getting Overheads, the Silver King and Vintage Chris Vanini. Find all of it on social media at Getting Overcast. Now, I've been kind of waffling back and forth in terms of how much to include on this show, how much to save for next Tuesday's WWE edition. Ultimately decided to save much of it primarily because the Silver King's exhausted. It's been a real long week, just coming out of SummerSlam and all of that wrestling, going immediately into Raw on Monday night. Some stuff has been happening in the sports realm that I've had to be covering for work. I'm just exhausted. And frankly, I woke up Friday morning after already delaying this episode and forgot, oh yeah, I need to do the second episode this week. So I had everything ready, but I just forgot I actually had to come on the mic and tape it. So we're going to go with those big topics I already discussed. There will be timestamps in the episode description, so you can skip around. As always, I hope you listen to the entire show, and anything else you are waiting to hear, additional kind of WWE Fallout comments and questions that we got last week, the Hey Now Championship Gauntlet match, all of that will be held Tuesday in our normal WWE edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Make sure you listen to this past week's episode. I'm not going to tell you it was one of my favorites. I mean, we've done 923 episodes. I'm sure there have been others that I've liked more, but I thought it was an extremely comprehensive breakdown of everything coming out of SummerSlam, especially a Monday Night Raw that felt more like a Raw after WrestleMania than the actual Raw after WrestleMania. And on that note, I'll also save this for Tuesday, but I do have a mea culpa to make in terms of the way I described SummerSlam as the best single night two of a PLE since Evolution. Not true. A couple of you called out the fact that I've graded other shows higher. I went back and looked at them, and yeah, you were right. So Silver King got that wrong, but we'll discuss that in greater detail with Vintage this coming Tuesday. For now, we need to talk AAA, NXT, and AEW.
But I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Unfortunately, we need to hit this off the top. Rhea Ripley on Thursday announced she will remain out of action indefinitely after undergoing surgery on her injured knee. In a social media post, Ripley explained that she basically has exhausted all other options. She underwent her first knee surgery, hoping no additional surgeries will be required afterward. Now, considering the surgery was a torn meniscus, assuming it had to be sewn back together and repaired, she will be out of action for 3 to 6 months. And do you know what is exactly 6 months from the taping of this episode? The Royal Rumble. Now, if she is able to come back sooner, in 3 months, WWE is not going to waste 3 months not having Ripley on television. But if her recovery quickly moves into month 4 and starts knocking on that door of month 5, at that point, you probably wait. There are huge questions that now pop up. Does WWE make Chelsea Green the full champion and have Ripley vacate her title? I lean toward probably on that. It's okay to have an interim champion for a couple of months. It's not okay if you're having an interim champion for half of a year. And I'm saying that ahead of Friday Night SmackDown, obviously. Will Chelsea hold this title long? If the interim label is removed, I doubt it. Does WWE use Green's reign to do something unique with the strap? Again, I actually lean toward probably. For a while, I thought JC Jane might go after Tiffany Stratton in the United States Championship. If WWE actually wants to make this division interesting, having Jane beat Green would be totally plausible compared to her beating Jade Cargill or Charlotte Flair or something. And given there's a Fatal Influence numbers advantage, she could have a nice reign with the title before someone more substantial takes it from her prior to Ripley returning. Don't forget, Money in the Bank is around the corner too. So it's completely plausible that Green holds the title for a little bit, someone else beats her, a different person wins Money in the Bank, and they kind of keep all of that stuff on SmackDown and they let Raw operate the way, it's been operating. Personally, my favorite for Money in the Bank, especially now that Chelsea is already interim champion, is Roxanne Perez, which flies in the face of that prediction. But, we'll circle back to that. That's in October. We have a ways to go until we reach that point. Now, we will discuss the Rhea Ripley situation in greater depth on our Tuesday episode, especially as now that we're taping, we're hours away from seeing what WWE is going to do on SmackDown to address the situation, the interim label with Chelsea's title reign. I also want to have that conversation with Vintage for all of you, but I did want to make sure we address this off the top because it is huge breaking news. She's the top female star right now in WWE, and clearly there are long-term injury concerns with Ripley from the standpoint that she just keeps getting hurt. And can they figure out a way to mitigate that? You're not going to like the answer. The answer is yes, by having her operate more like Roman Reigns. Are they going to do it? Are fans going to accept that? Will she be okay with that? Sometimes your body just tells you have to do certain things that you don't want to do. We'll see the way Rhea Ripley is treated and booked going forward in WWE. Obviously, crappy news to some degree that she has to have this surgery. But you know what? For her long term, making sure that's correct, the meniscus in the knee for an athletic sport like this, it's just the right decision. And I understand waiting. There's a lot of athletes who try to wait, hope it heals naturally and so on. But once this becomes the obvious move, you just basically have to get it done as soon as possible. And generally it works. So best wishes for Rhea Ripley's full recovery. The order of operations for the remainder of this show, we're going to do the AAA Verano de Escandalo Week 2 breakdown. It's very quick. It's only a couple matches, and all of those are short. Then we will move to NXT and AEW. I mentioned it off the top. There are timestamps in the episode description. If you want to jump around, you can. As always, I hope you listen to the entire show. So AAA. Dominic Mysterio cut a gorilla position promo after turning on El Grande Americano last week. He asked what else we expected from the King of the Luchadors when there was another bastard there pretending to be Mexican. That was the only follow-up we got, which was slightly disappointing, but considering 3 shows were taped in one night, it wasn't the end of the world. And I believe the first episode, the one that aired live, was actually taped after the 2 episodes, one of which we saw this past Saturday and one of which we're going to see next Saturday. It was lighter out in the arena. The crowd was far sparser. So it looks like they taped these things out of order, which then makes sense why key players would not be positioned heavily on the subsequent 2 shows. The Cruiserweight Championship was on the line. Rey Fenix defending against Mini Vikingo. Dorian Roldan whispered in Mini's ear before and after the match, likely indicating recruitment to El Ojo. We mentioned last week that Dominic joining could help turn El Hijo del Vikingo babyface upon his return. Well, if you want to double down on that, turning Vikingo's brother heel, joining his former faction, that gets the job done. This match was straight up crazy. Fenix kicked Mini so hard his body just stopped in the middle of the air and fell down to the canvas. He immediately answered with a tornillo crossbody and a code red. Mini landed a counter crucifix bomb, running Spanish fly, poison rana, frog splash, avalanche Spanish fly. Fenix appropriately avoided a Phoenix splash, but Mini countered the Mexican muscle buster into a small package, only to get his head taken off with a kick. Fenix ultimately hit his finisher, immediately putting over Mini while still in the cover for his great work and his heart and so on and so forth. I'm glad I rewatched this because the first time I saw it was probably midnight and I was, just I'll be candid, I was inebriated. So I wrote down, like on my little notepad on my phone, Mini Vikingo 5 stars A+. But it was not that. It was exceptional. It was a great match. But, there's something when you can turn your brain off and watch something and be wowed by it, and something else when you're like being analytical and trying to evaluate it here for the show. This was, I would say, as good as the match with his brother, if not better. He needs to add a ton of bulk, figure out a way to survive long-term given his style. He currently wrestles exactly like a precocious 18-year-old would, but dude, the ceiling is crazy high for this kid. I'm at 4.25 stars A. It was more about spectacular moves. There wasn't really a lot of storytelling in the match other than Phoenix completely beating him down whenever it seemed like he was gaining momentum. But that's just that's more match flow than match story. So there wasn't enough to take this to any real level, which is precisely why there are so many matches out there that other people may grade 5 stars or 4.75 or some number beyond that. And I look at it and I'm like, it was an A match because they did a lot of moves and the crowd was excited, but there was no story. There was nothing to really hook me. And I knew X, Y, and Z sequences were not resulting in finishes. And when you watch this match, you kind of feel the same way. That's why I'm at 4.25 stars. It was a great sprint style 10-minute match. They went a mile a minute. You should definitely watch it if you missed it. But is it anywhere near a match that your conversation? No, it is not. Perros Del Mal backstage said they lived up to their promises and have become a nightmare for everyone in AAA. Daga promised their legacy will continue to grow next week. They look incredibly cool together. It's awesome to see Angel and Berto motivated again. And it's kind of crazy how Carmen Petrovic levels up to such a significant degree in AAA compared to NXT. I'm just talking aesthetically. Lince Dorado, Mecha Wolf, and La Parka fought in a qualifier for the Latin American 4-way at Triple Mania for the vacant title. This was a fantastic match. Mecha Wolf ate a blue thunder bomb late from La Parka. Dorado caught him with a handspring stunner as Wolf on La Parka's shoulders capitalized with a crucifix driver simultaneously. Dorado took Wolf off the apron with a hurricanrana ringside, then hit a 450 on La Parka for a false finish. Wolf misted Lince in the face. Then he ate a Spanish fly from La Parka, who avoided a flying headbutt from Wolf, catching him with a catch German suplex appropriately. He also hit a splash and bone breaker to advance. Super fun match, 3.75 stars B+. La Parka advancing once Dragon Lee got injured and pulled from the match makes total sense. I do wonder what the plans are now for the tag team division at Triple Mania, or I should say I was wondering when this match ended. Lince deserves a shout out on this show, okay? This guy got released from WWE in 2021. He did not let that dissuade him at all. He went right back to the indies where CMLL, MLW, Impact, and JPW strong in the United States. He somehow got an ROH World Title #1 contendership on AEW Rampage out of nowhere. Then he comes back to WWE as a trainer in 2025 with no idea that they were going to make the AAA deal. All of a sudden, he's making spot appearances on NXT house shows. He's wrestling in Evolve, and now he's back to wrestling regularly in Mexico. Plus, He's over in AAA, and I believe he's still making wrestling gear too. So good for Lince Dorado. It's great to see him thrive and have a career both as a trainer, gear maker, and as a wrestler in Mexico. It's a super cool story. El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. and Galeno beat a couple jobbers in 3 minutes. I cannot stress enough how big of a fan I have become of Wagner and Galeno. Wagner has one of the best themes in wrestling, as I said last week. Galeno has a completely different vibe. The dude comes out to Mexican rap. They have a Steiner Brothers kind of deal going on. I mean, they're literally called the Wagner Brothers. And while I once assumed Galeno would fight Omos at Triple Mania, it seems like they might go against the War Raiders for those tag team titles and win them. Galeno, by the way, is like 80 pounds heavier and 10 years younger than his brother. His finisher is absurdly awesome. You can tell this guy got a lot of training in Japan working with Pro Wrestling Noah, just based on the way he works in and around the ring. I could see these guys getting work on the main roster at some point. You could put them in any arena against a wide variety of opponents, and they could get the crowd going. You could put this match from AAA on a WWE episode, NXT, AEW, and the crowd would pop just the same because they were two beastly guys just murking these jobbers and executing some cool moves, and everything was crisp and smooth, and you could just tell they knew what they were doing. So you already knew I was a huge fan of Wagner. I've mentioned and put over Galeno before, but them as a tag team is awesome as well. And I don't know, when they show up, I'm happy. Like their entrance music hits, I find out they're on a card, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to watch that. And it's not a feeling I have about a lot of wrestlers, in 2026. All right, that wraps up AAA. We still have NXT and AEW to go. We're going to hit them in that order. Before we get to it, Silver King does need to remind you here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions whenever a major wrestling show has news that makes it worthy of an instant reaction. You will also get exclusive news, analysis, editorial posts every week on Friday directly from the Silver King. It is extra content to keep you happy for your contribution that happens to keep this show running and on the air. We greatly appreciate everyone who does support us, and we just want to give you a little something back, which is why we create all that additional content. But even if you don't want the content, please support us. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, moving over to NXT. Ren Sinclair was going crazy, pacing and ranting backstage about how Ren QCC put themselves in tough positions last week. Kendal Grey calmed her down, dapped her up, trying to boost Sinclair's confidence, and they both finally had matching Ren QCC gear for the first time, which made the Silver King happy.
That's cool.
So first was a speed title match. Sinclair defending against Zarya. Ren, the champion, didn't even get a TV entrance.
So dumb.
Zarya mostly dominated until Sinclair went on a run with 90 seconds left, hitting an X Factor and double underhook suplex. Zarya rolled through a flying crossbody, but was unable to lift Sinclair, spearing her out of the ring before getting back into the ring at 1. Ren had escaped an F5 on the verge of locking in Final Wrench. It seemed like they were about 5 seconds off from the plan. Final Wrench was supposed to come as time expired. Time expired way earlier, but they just kept wrestling to get the spot done. It was just, that's the consequence of doing a stupid speed match, right? Zarya flattened Sinclair with an F5 after the bell to stand tall. This went precisely as expected. I believe it was exactly what we outlined last week, a time limit draw that will effectively make Ren the number 1 contender for the North American title. And just as we said last week, this was extremely unnecessary because Sinclair had already accomplished enough to earn that number 1 contendership on her merits. They were both sloppy here because they were rushing due to the idiotic time limit stipulation. This concept of speed, I've said it so many times, it does not help anyone, especially developmental talent that has enough to worry about bell to bell. Ren Zarya as a feud, definitely for me. So I'm excited ultimately to see a real match, but this really was not it. And we knew that going in. NXT Championship was on the line in the main event. Kendal Grey defending against Lola Vice in NXT Underground. This was the first ever title match contested through this stipulation. Vice's family was in attendance once again, and Grey's hair was all braided up with Sinclair finally ringside for one of her matches given the stipulation. The visual presentation was the best since the pandemic. Vice quickly escaped an armbar before Grey slid off the apron with a Hurricane Rana into the announce desk. Kendal broke a headlock by driving Lola's hips into the steel steps, but Vice pulled Grey down by the foot for a header into the steps that clanged. She sold a bloody ear, but it appeared that her left would have landed on the stairs. They were selling the right. It turns out, I think the idea was that the head hit her shoulder, and therefore she busted her eardrum on her own body, not on the steel steps, which was what made the noise, excuse me. What happened in reality, not in kayfabe, is that she burst a blood capsule in the ear. So Grey stumbles around. She's selling a total loss of her equilibrium. This is going into a commercial break. It stayed full screen on the Netflix broadcast, but it was picture-in-picture on the US broadcast. I watched this whole match back. It's how entertained I was. Spoiler alert. Somehow, they made it so the ear kept bleeding after being cleaned up, which made me believe for about 15 to 20 seconds, wait, is this legitimate? It was one of the best works I have seen in years watching wrestling. The trainer must have had an additional capsule that he busted when he went to wipe it with the towel or something. I don't know. It was crazy. At the same time, in both kayfabe and reality, this match should have been stopped if someone is stumbling around, unable to gain footing and needing to sit back down. Any other combat sport, MMA, boxing, hell, in football these days with, I forget what they're called, but they have like the doctor on site who now gets to make concussion judgments. I know this wasn't a concussion, it was equilibrium, but a referee would have ended the fight immediately. It's one thing when, okay, it got busted, they're cleaning that up. If she stands and can put her hands together and make a count, talk to the ref, and she's good, cool. She stumbled around during this commercial break for like 90 seconds. Boom, match is over. Then they come back from commercial. The match continues, and she's stumbling a few additional times while trying to fight off Vice. Again, in reality, not kayfabe, if I'm the referee, I'm calling this match. Like, this woman is not able to compete. This dude should be investigated for allowing this match to continue. I digress, okay? What was cool about this is that they were like fixing her ear, the trainers, ringside. So they give her a bandage to put on her ear to stop the bleeding. So Grey grabs the gauze, pushes the trainer aside, wraps up her own head, ties it up, and then jumps back in the ring. I have never seen anything like that before. My mouth was agape like Sami Zayn at SummerSlam. So Grey, finally getting back to the match, hit 3 German suplexes. She kept selling her unsteadiness. Vice hit her with a pump knee that sent Grey flipping head first backwards off the apron flat onto the floor in an incredible bump that we posted on social media in case you missed it. Kendal caught a kick for an ankle lock. Lola reversed it. They exchanged kicks and punches, with Grey falling into the ringside crowd, which held her up and pushed her back into the ring for a feint back elbow retort. Kendal then collapsed on Lola while both of them were knocked out. Suddenly, Vice awoke first, immediately put her on a rear naked choke. Grey countered into an armbar. Lola drilled her with an elbow to the injured ear. Kendal avoided a back fist finisher that knocked out the referee. Lola locked in the rear naked choke, with Kendal fading right in front of Ren, but the referee was knocked out. He wasn't able to call it. As Vice tried to wake the referee up, Sinclair starts smacking Grey across the face to get her back onto her feet. Vice caught Grey with a roundhouse kick to the ear and began delivering hammer elbows, but Kendal caught the third, moved it into a triangle, leaned all the way back, and kayfabe hyperextended the elbow for a tap-out victory and title retention. They bowed and hugged after the bell. Vice raised Grey's arm, and the show ended. This was effing insane. I hope someone uploads the full match, including the part that aired exclusively on Netflix full screen, because if you saw the CW version, you didn't really get that, nor did you get the audio of commentary selling the pure craziness of what was happening for 3.5 minutes. The bump preceding that was fantastic. Kendall's selling, once the action resumed, was better than most veterans. A buddy asked me, he's like, hey, why do you think she stopped selling it later in the match? First of all, adrenaline works as an explanation, but beyond that, she sold it multiple times. She kept getting kicked in it and then stumbling again and then going to the canvas, and she had to figure out a way to get out of it. Taping her own head up was some of the most badass shit I've seen in wrestling. And I say that differentiating kayfabe from reality of, like, you know, people mutilating their opponents and shit. The goal in their matches has been to book Kendal and Lola as 50-50 as possible, because everyone knows they're fight forever opponents who are going to go nuts if given the opportunity on the main roster a few years from now. Vice could not have been more protected. She got the visual victory. Grey was also booked like a beast, overcoming such a crazy injury, especially the way it was presented. Lola is headed to the main roster. Damian Priest, her boyfriend, is on SmackDown. She is needed so much more on Raw. It would be nonsensical to add another woman to the Blue brand when they barely get their new call-ups on TV as is, unless there's a transfer. I'm not sure what she would do there. Also, for some reason, I don't know, the aesthetics of Lola Vice just like fit Raw better than SmackDown, if that makes sense. I know she wears light blue and light pink and SmackDown is blue. I'm just saying, like, her as a personality just feels like a Raw superstar. Sinclair smacking the shit out of Grey to get her friend back standing was awesome storytelling. Everyone in the arena, from the referee and the trainers to the live crowd to the wrestlers around the ring, they did their jobs expertly. My adrenaline was pumping when this was over. Lola has improved so much over the last year. When it looked like it would take her forever to figure out wrestling, one day it must have clicked. I'd love to talk to her about that. Kendal is one of the most natural women's wrestlers I have ever seen. In ring, she has legitimate GOAT potential. I cannot wait to see them fight again whenever that happens. 4.25 stars, the best underground match to date. And I got to tell you, I was super, super close to giving this 4.5. That's how awesome it was. Tony D'Angelo hit the ring to address Grayson Waller's promo from last week, not allowing him to use NXT as a stepping stone to boomerang himself back to the main roster. That is 2 Aussie references in as many weeks that barely got a reaction tone. You're just not funny. D'Angelo turned his focus to Cruz Montana, but Waller interrupted from the crow's nest, saying he was already bored with the segment. Fair enough. Waller said he's the money fight, and the NXT title right now goes through him. D'Angelo invited him down, claiming he was a bitch from talking shit from afar, upset at the direction of his own career. Tony D recalled them being on the War Games team together during NXT 2.0 and how everyone else on their team has won a major title except for Waller. D'Angelo said Waller is searching for relevancy, which he won't find as long as he is champion. Waller put himself over for drawing attention to the brand, saying D'Angelo lost his family and his balls, though he gave him credit for at least standing on his own 2 feet, while the rest of the soft-ass roster hung out backstage. Montana interrupted from the crowd, with fans chanting Boricua, and Grayson having no idea what they were saying, which is pretty funny to see. Cruz understood why he had to rattle cages last week, but said proving yourself is about putting in work, not just talking shit. The chips on their shoulders are different. Montana didn't have another choice but to prove he belongs for his family. Waller just wants to be even more comfortable while trying to force others to notice him for selfish reasons. Waller pointed out that Montana keeps telling the same sad story, facts, and he was ready to piss all over his fire. D'Angelo finally butted in, offering to defend the title against whoever wins the number 1 contendership, considering they both have the same goal. This segment was a significant step down from last week for both Waller and Montana, especially considering all 3 guys were so far apart physically. It made little sense from a blocking standpoint because the distance substantially reduced the intensity. D'Angelo continues to disappoint as champion. He's completely lost the bass in his voice. His character has zero motivation. It's stunning that NXT has not attempted to tweak or alter the gimmick so fans can find something to latch onto with him. Everything Waller said was proven true by the respective promos of Montana and D'Angelo, and Montana now needs to move on from his life story stuff and toward what is happening now, currently in 2026. The booking was fine and sensible, just had much higher expectations coming out of last week's awesome segments. Waller backstage came across Kalani Jordan, who said she appreciated his radical honesty, but he's had plenty of opportunities at the NXT Championship while she's still waiting for one. She promised she would do what he could not, win the top title on her first attempt. Waller told her, "Don't miss," referring to her fiance, Carmelo Hayes. Mason Rook then stepped in, saying he moved across the world just the same as Waller. He's twice the size and twice as good. Certainly not the definition of soft. People would disagree with that latter point. Waller was making a sarcastic comment about him needing to go through puberty when Cam Hendricks attacked Rook from behind for a pull-apart. The attack was unfortunate because I was interested to see the confrontation between them. Jordan remains way too try-hard with these promos, but the gimmick that she's working, it does play. Robert Stone was on the phone speaking with someone who's a free agent, presumably joining the brand. Then he told Montana that his number 1 contendership against Waller was official for next week. Tristan Angels confronted him, angry that someone new walked in the building and is getting a huge opportunity. Montana flipped it on him, reminding that he was putting in work last year at multiple major events. Meanwhile, Angels has only been there for 3 months. I'm not sure why they did that. It kind of gives away to me that Montana's going to start feuding with Angels, or maybe Angels interferes in the number 1 contendership match. Therefore, I'm expecting Waller to win because they basically told us as much. Maybe they will surprise me. Maybe Montana wins and then Angels cost him the title match whenever that happens. But otherwise, why would you inject a low carder who just lost a feud into like your biggest free agent signings, massive first opportunity? In terms of the phone call, not sure who Stone could have been speaking about from a free agent standpoint, unless it's Hiromu Takahashi or Richard Holiday, who has apparently been signed out of Australia. Maybe it's someone else from the main roster being brought down. Going back to the Cruz Tristan thing, just since I forgot this point, it was fun between them, like the back and forth. It's ironic that he was talking about putting in all this work in NXT before this kid, but he did that as a different character. It was Mike Santana. Shiloh Hill announced on social media that he fractured part of his face in the match with Angels. He said he will be out of action for a notable period of time, then called out Hendricks for probably lying about the knee injury, considering his diagnosis did not match his recovery. Then he called out the WWE history with the Intercontinental Championship and how Pat Patterson won it at a tournament in Brazil that no one saw and no one remembers. He also talked about the history of Japanese myths starting in Texas and some stuff about Callie Armstrong being part of a medley world record in track. The whole manic part of his character, it remains not for me, but at least it wasn't weird. The injury sucks. It's nice that there's now some reinforcements in this division. Tag Team Championship Vanity Project defending against Miles Bourne and Tavian Heights. Bourne backstage promised that he would go all out for his brother, who was super emotional and hyped up for the match. Tavian said he doesn't know what he'll do if they don't win, indicating to the viewer that a heel turn is possible. So then they gassed each other up, and they got ready for the match. This was the mid-show feature. Heights was shot out of a cannon all match, but especially on his hot tag. Despite that, he tagged out with Bourne entering while clearly exhausted from having taken a beating. Commentary called this out, and I thought it was one of the best call-outs that I've heard in a long time. They're like, you just tagged in, you're fresh, you're going on a crazy hot tag. Why the hell are you tagging out to your partner who is clearly exhausted? It did not make a shred of sense. Despite that, the challengers hit a tandem dropkick powerbomb. The heels answered with a dropkick heart attack, which was really odd to do those moves in succession, one after another. Heights re-entered for stereo power slams. Miles had hit a power slam just seconds earlier. Jackson Drake tried to interfere, so the referee ejected both he and Michael Lockwood. Ricky Smokes ate Born Again with Brad Baylor clotheslined out of the ring. Heights ran back into the middle of the squared circle, hitting Height of Glory, his huge overhead almost belly-to-belly suplex, with new tag team champions being crowned and Miles becoming a double title holder. Booker T mentioned how Tavian may not have been the legal man at the end, but live and then confirmed on rewatch, Heights was 100% legal. Not sure what Booker was on there. Hell of a tag team match. As is always the case in NXT, even when the division is thin or dead, somehow they can find the right guys to put on bangers. The title change is a shocker. I figured Vanity would hold these titles for another few months. It was a strong 5-month reign for them. I could see these flipping back sooner than later. The match was incredibly interesting considering some of the details I just pointed out. Tavian tagging out to an exhausted partner seconds after entering. During a great hot tag, Miles doing a power slam sequence before stereo power slams, and then the finish as called by Booker T. It was an awesome moment for Heights, a guy who is seemingly well-liked, not only by those in the back, but regular NXT fans who show up weekly. Bourne operating as a double champion. It feels entirely unnecessary. Perhaps Drake takes the North American title off of him in short order. That would be a really interesting move to flip both titles between the teams and have the Bourne and Heights team operate against a bunch of heels where they can do a combination of matches together and just give them a hard time and inject some personality into both of them. No doubt, Bourne and Heights level up the tag team division, and really, if we are being dead honest, they should remain a team long-term. They are much better as a unit than they are as singles. They work perfectly against one another. Like, I can't stress it enough. Like, they're almost Street Profits-esque, where you look at them and you say, could Montez Ford be a single star? Yes. Can you see that with Miles or Heights? Probably not. Okay. But how well does Ford work with Angelo Dawkins? Incredibly well. And that is the combination, or I should say the comparison, that I see here with Heights and Bourne. And you know what? Hell, they would be more interesting than many teams on the main roster. There's certainly the concept that Bourne takes a fall in a forthcoming title match, which sends Heights into a tailspin and a heel turn. But I hope that's not the booking. I would really like them just to be champions and stay together. Match was 3.75 stars B+, due to the messiness, but it was on its way to a higher grade. EK Prosper fought Keanu Carver. Drake was throwing a fit backstage when he and Lockwood passed Carver. The the latter two again staring one another down as they did last week. Keanu showed a different side when he nearly ran into Booker T on the announce desk, apologizing profusely and not flying off the handle like he had in the past. Prosper hit a cool double stomp to the back, jumping off the barricade, following with a crossbody off the top rope. Carver ran him into the middle turnbuckle with an Irish whip, but Prosper came back with some educated feet, a springboard moonsault, tornado DDT, and swanton blockbuster, which would be a great finisher for someone, by the way. Carver caught him running with a pop-up German suplex that easily could have been the finish. Same with a strong powerbomb that followed. Prosper answered with a pop-up shotgun dropkick and Shining Wizard, but Keanu prevented a moonsault and shockingly caught EK in a small package to win. Carver tried to be a good guy and give Prosper his props after the bell. He was hesitant to accept the dap-up, understandably. This complete 180 in Carver's personality is incredibly interesting. And as I have said a few times now, the hate thrown his way is ridiculously forced. You, I, and everyone listening thought when we initially saw Keanu Carver, and look, some of it is due to his race and size and whatever. It's like, oh, they called up Obafemi, so they're just throwing Keanu Carver on TV before he's ready. And I'm not even saying that's not the truth. Like, he was put on TV way before he was ready to be on TV. But what has happened since, especially working with Prosper, who deserves a lot of credit as a similar fresh call-up, being put in a difficult position, wrestling against a guy who's less experienced and less talented bell to bell than he is. In these matches, through these matches, Carver's developed like a moveset, and he looks fluid. Despite being a massive individual, he bumps and sells for a much smaller guy. I'm impressed by him. Like, the ceiling is not Obafemi. It's not Trick Williams. I don't even think his ceiling is like Carmelo Hayes at this point. But can Keanu Carver be a real big badass dude one day on the main roster? Like, yeah, I actually think he could be. It's just going to take another few years to get there. Bro gets better every time he gets in the ring, every time we see him. Prosper continues to be a perfect foil for him, to the point I kind of wonder whether they could be a successful tag team, just given the significant differential in size and style. Both of their ceilings are far higher than I thought when they debuted. It is real cool to see their progress. Dark State was talking about Dion Lennox being in a bad mood despite them coming off a win in a trios match. Lennox reminded that he got put through the crow's nest and Saquon Sugars is still giving him shit. The entire goal, or I should say their entire goal, was to become untouchable, not complacent, just because they won a six-man. Lennox was motivated by what Waller said about the locker room being soft, saying they are never going to go down like that. This was legitimately one of the best Dark State segments ever. Actual personalities, character flashes, motivations. It's absurd how long it took NXT to figure out a way to make these guys interesting, and it may be too little too late now, but as I said months ago, the backstage segments are where they can have the opportunity to show personality. That is a way to develop factions way better than, oh, they beat the shit out of a bunch of people in the ring. We see that all the time on every brand. No one wants silent badasses in 2026, especially mediocre silent badasses. Jada Parker and Thea Hale fought Nikita Lyons and Carmen Petrovic. Lyons hit the Pearl River plunge on Hale early, which I gotta say, I love that she does the move. I've told you all back in the day it was my favorite finisher ever, but it's a finisher. You should not be hitting a Pearl River plunge in the middle of a match for a 1.5 count. Parker got the hot tag, but quickly ate a heart attack coming out of a cover. Jada wound up pouncing Natty off the apron with Hypnotic. Then she hit a nasty teardrop on Lyons and eliminated Petrovic, with Hale landing her short-range senton for the somewhat surprising babyface victory. Natty led a heel attack after the bell, but Thea ducked a punch that nailed Nikita, and the faces again stood tall. It was fair to assume coming in the heel team with the numbers advantage would win this, especially after Jada beat Natty with the towel throw 2 weeks ago, and considering Thea was in the match, primed to take the fall. Interestingly, Hale pinned the Evolved champion, which could result in her getting a title opportunity on either show. Parker is definitely showing signs of improvement. They worked well together as a somewhat odd couple team. It was a bit strange they won so easily and then avoided the beatdown on the back end when they were outnumbered. It seemed clear Jada and Natty is not over, which is positive, but I am curious to see how it builds from here. Bronco Nima backstage told Lucian Price he owed him one. He took his eye off the ball last week and cost him the match. He admitted as much. Nima double-checked that they were still on the same page, so Price acknowledged that, saying he simply had to create his own backup plan in NXT since Bronco was creating his own plan in AAA. Birthright interrupted to talk shit, so Price challenged Lexis King for his speed title, paying no mind to King's assertion that number one contenderships are earned through the tournament. Fine segment without the mud, but please, for the love of all that is holy, Stop trying to make speed happen. It's not going to happen, and it continues to drag down NXT TV. Now you are making excuses for creating a number one contendership, completely undeserved, by the way, outside of the confines of the tournament, which is literally 50% of the entire gimmick.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
I just don't get why these speed titles are still a thing.
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't get it.
Lizzie Rain got surrounded backstage by the remainder of the calling, with Izzy Dame again talking a mile a minute for no reason whatsoever. This woman may need like a beta blocker or something to just chill the hell out when you speak. Is it nervousness? Is her mind racing? Like, I remember back when I was younger, and I'm not saying this to put myself over, but my teachers would tell my parents, like, Adam talks a lot really fast because, they said he's smart. He has a lot of thoughts in his head. He feels like he needs to get them out. Maybe that's what it is with Izzy. Like, maybe she's brilliant. And because of that, she just feels like she has so much to say and she wants to get it all in. Slow the hell down. Create an opportunity for your words to land and make an impact. Someone needs to teach her that. Dame credited Reigns' win last week to Shawn Spears being ringside. He conveniently showed up to announce a mixed tag team match was already set for next week. Nico Vance told Spears he should have taken his own advice and quit while he was ahead. Lizzie then clarified that she doesn't trust him and shit better not go sideways. The match we expected coming out of last week, the segment was fine overall. I actually enjoy the way Vance speaks with his deliberate tone. It's too bad he is far less interesting between the bells and has not really developed as a wrestler at all in the last 2 years. So that wraps up NXT this week. It was a step down from the prior week, but that was such a high quality episode that matching that was just never going to happen in the immediate aftermath. Still a lot of interesting stuff happening. The women's title scene seems completely open. Kalani Jordan probably stepping in as number one contender. The men, all of a sudden, there's multiple legitimate challengers where they did not exist even a couple of weeks ago. The tag team scene has been shaken up a little bit for the men. And the North American scenes, I'm trying to think. It seems like we know the direction those are going. And at least in one of those cases, a title change is legitimately possible. So NXT certainly holding the interest, no question about it. Moving over to AEW. The company made a whole thing this week promoting Grand Slam Mexico as a special 2.5 hour episode, which confused me when last week's regular Dynamite went 5 minutes beyond 2.5 hours. It went like 2:35. Meanwhile, this show did not go 2.5 hours on Wednesday. It lasted nearly 3 hours. I want to say it ended at 2:55.
So dumb.
Like, are you just going to make this show 3 hours? If so, fine. Make Dynamite 3 hours, cancel Collision, or make Collision 1 hour and just throw it on whenever you want. That way I just don't have to watch it at this point. Like, what are we doing here? It's really confusing. Just like last year, the atmosphere in Arena Mexico was crazy. Those fans are so damn loud, so consistent in how they cheer and stay engaged in matches. Just a phenomenal environment to watch wrestling. I do hope to see it someday. Despite the special show, there was some build for matches on Collision, so we will still mix the two episodes together like usual. AEW was better to a degree from a match relevancy standpoint. There's still a bunch of random bookings thrown together, which remains frustrating, especially when you're putting on a show like this Grand Slam. Overall, 9 of 15 matches this week were relevant, which is 60%. Double what we've been getting recently, way closer to where they should be or should have been for a long time. But despite Grand Slam being a quality show, it could have been even better, is my point, if they just put in that storytelling effort. Outside of one segment, it was match after match after match, which to be fair, is what the Mexican crowd largely wants and what AEW is best at. Collision opened with the debut, of Motor City Machine Guns in AEW. For those wondering, I have no qualms about them showing up on the B show as it was live. And while fans refuse to admit it, AEW always tries to do a little bit extra when they are on Thursday live opposite TNA. The Detroit crowd was tremendous for them. The promo was basically them hitting every single item on a checklist for talent leaving WWE. 1, we're so happy to be here. This is where the best wrestle.
Are you fucking kidding me?
2, this is really our home. More than you know. 3, we are so happy to be all elite. Seriously, that was the entire segment. No exaggeration. My only surprise was them not taking a shot at WWE, which for them, you could actually say is earned because they pretty much wasted a year plus of their career. They got a title reign and they were booked in some cool matches at TLCs. They never got a chance to do anything. So if anyone was going to tape a swipe, I would have accepted it for Motor City Machine Guns, but they didn't, best I could tell. Despite barely speaking in this segment, they had more lines in a few minutes here than the entirety of their WWE careers, possibly combined. That's how poorly they were booked over on that show. On Collision, Bang Bang Gang without Jay White beat Death Riders, including John Moxley, in an 8-man tag team match. I gave this relevancy credit. There was ongoing issues with the sides due to the dogs, but it's wearing on me as a viewer that some combination of the Riders have to fight on every episode of television. Juice Robinson won with a rolling package, and the dogs attacked after the bell. MCMG saved with chairs. David Finlay's attempt to retrieve his shillelagh was thwarted. On Collision, Will Ospreay defeated Daniel Garcia in the main event with Mox on commentary, seemingly unbothered by the events that recently transpired. Ospreay won with a sudden hidden blade, easily the match of the night, but probably featured Garcia getting a little bit too much. High B level. Will randomly started slowly walking around the ring after the bell for no reason, giving an opening for Mark Davis to drag him into the crowd, where he also got beat by RPG Vice and took a pile driver on the floor. He ultimately fought out of a triple team, with the idea being that no one has his back anymore. It remains unexplained why, before joining the Riders, no babyfaces backed him. It doesn't seem like the type of good guy champion who should be leading the company. Ospreay made their forthcoming match a street fight with no outside interference. He literally just decided that. No one approved it. The graphic was made 5 seconds after he said it. Come on, man. Can we just be better about this shit? On Dynamite, Death Riders beat Cage, Cope, and the Young Bucks in the opening match. The crowd was wild for Adam Copeland singing his song to completion. There was an awful spot where Cope tried and failed doing a 619, which directly reminded of John Cena knowing that he should only tease the spot and not actually try to execute it against AJ Styles because, guys their size can't do it, especially at their age. I don't see anyone mocking or complaining about this like CM Punk's moonsault, which he executed. He just missed, by the way. Ironic how that happens. Marina Shafir interfered directly in front of the referee. No disqualification, no ejection. Christian Cage literally did the term rhymes. It was a see you next Tuesday punt. And apparently that's okay to do. Tagging rules were irrelevant. Mox won with a roll-up after Cope accidentally bumped into one of the Jacksons on the apron. So the champions and challengers for All In lost as teammates to a group that already received not one but 2 title matches and lost both of those opportunities. Why? Why did they lose this match against this group specifically? The finish was weak. AEW rarely does actual roll-ups, so I'm not going to, ding it too much. Just some odd booking as far as I was concerned. The main event of Dynamite was Ospreay beating Davis in a Mexico City street fight with no outside interference allowed, to which I wondered what exactly would have happened if there was interference, considering it was a street fight. Does everyone just abide by the rule for the love of the game because it's where the best wrestle? That's a major logic gap in that stipulation. I digress. Davis primarily used a chair early before throwing a Rubbermaid trash can at Ospreay's head and then sending him into the crowd where he was caught by a planted fan. The pay-per-view main eventer later rolled down some steps, which was so incredibly dumb from that context. Don't worry, this got worse. Ospreay bladed for no reason, so he already had half of a crimson mask. Davis grabs a fork, starts stabbing him in the forehead. Let me just say this. I should not have to use the word stab when breaking down a wrestling match, unless it's with a phrase, took a stab. Like, he took a stab at a Mexican destroyer and it didn't work. Unless I'm saying that, I should not be using the word stab in a wrestling match breakdown. Ospreay used a chair for an Ozcutter before stabbing Davis with the fork and then putting it in his mouth because he is such a badass, he doesn't care about potentially sharing diseases via blood. Davis came back with what was supposed to be a pile driver into some open chairs. It was nothing close to one. Ospreay's head landed on Davis's thigh, which could have been even more dangerous. Meanwhile, now Davis is bleeding like a stuffed pig, so he used barbed wire to rake Ospreay's back. What does Will do? He reaches out and grabs Davis's entire crotch, like penis, balls, all of it. And then he does an apron pile driver where Davis's head clearly hit the canvas. Ospreay leveled him with a hidden blade as he entered the ring to break a count for a false finish. Davis picked him up for a counter pile driver that was easily the best move of the entire match. It was beautiful. Styles Clash was a false finish, so Ospreay hit a hidden blade with barbed wire, which added nothing for the win. I'm not sure I understand the concept of running this match or booking it this way. Having your number one contender go 20 minutes with a mid-carder who held the lowest singles title in the company for a couple weeks, a couple months ago. That's not to mention the spots and risks taken in this match, plus the obscene amounts of unnecessary blood, and the fact that Ospreay fought Garcia previously on Collision for no reason whatsoever. I mean, in storyline, there was a reason for both of these. Don't get it twisted. I'm saying there's no reason he should be wrestling matches like this so close to main eventing All In. Now, there was an incredible match in here somewhere. It went overboard in so many ways. And ultimately, yes, Ospreay exercised a demon, but it had no relevance for his feud with Kenny Omega, who wasn't on the show at all. A- to low A range for this. I kept asking myself, why? The longer the match went on. Why is this happening? Why are they doing that spot? Why is he being stabbed in the head? I shouldn't be doing that. In Collision, Tommaso Ciampa beat Nick Comoroto. Remember that name? In 75 seconds. An hour later backstage, he cut a promo saying he's focused on the Casino Gauntlet. He wanted to be in the match for the number one spot against Andrade El Idolo in Mexico. What is so cool about AEW is if you are a wrestler there, you can just say you want something and you get it. There is no one in kayfabe who ever tells them no. If I worked there, I would cut promos every week. I deserve a world championship match, and I'm going to get one next week on Dynamite. And I would just get one, and then I would lose, and I would say, you know what? I deserve a world championship match, street fight on Collision. And I would just get it. Oh, you know what? At the next pay-per-view, I deserve a world championship match, no outside interference for my opponent. I get to do whatever I want, and then I would win the world title. Because that's the way the backstage shit operates there. On Collision, Commander defeated Jay Lethal and got a spot in the match for beating a guy who barely wrestles on the show and hasn't been relevant in years. But again, Ciampa got one by beating Nick Comoroto, so that's what we're doing. On Dynamite, Andrade El Idolo beat Commander and Ciampa to earn the number one spot. I gave this relevancy credit for the match type, despite the thrown-together nature of the competitors. Ciampa came out in American flag gear, I guess because the other two are Mexican. Andrade told one of the planted fans to kiss him. She completely stonewalled him, which was hysterically unintentional. Ciampa then stole her phone during the break and took a picture down his tights. Andrade took off his pants to debut How You Know tights before hitting Three Amigos. So Ciampa worked the tights, worked the pants, exactly like they were the plush mascot a couple weeks ago in the middle of an important match. He's trying to get the number one spot in the gauntlet. Absolutely idiotic. Commander kicked out of Project Ciampa, hit his beautiful tightrope moonsault on him before Andrade grabbed Bro for the DM to win the match. Expected outcome, fun match. I can't go above 3.75 stars B+ for all the reasons mentioned, but it was a fun three-way that could have been even better than it was booked. Andrade promoted after the bell, promising to win the gauntlet at All In and become AEW champion, not just for himself, but for all Latinos and Mexico. Then he properly used his catchphrase, which has become incredibly over. I love that for him. MJF made a surprise return when he dropped the mic, his music distracting for an attack from behind with the Triple B. He stole the Dynamite Diamond ring back and beat the crap out of Andrade, who bladed from the ring and then got thrown off stage. He called Mexico a piece of shit country because, of course, and he called himself an American hero who is the best in the world. Then he held up the Triple B and basically declared himself the real AEW champion. MJF's case was that Ospreay cost him the title won by Omega. Then he did a version of Dolph Ziggler's It Should Have Been Me, but far louder. Despite claiming he was still champion, MJF said on his own accord he would compete for the number 2 spot in the gauntlet, dogwalk Andrade in the match, and then win the contract. Then he went back and he said he's the one true champion. Now, this would have been great without that element. The return was well timed. The attack was well done. MJF was shot out of a cannon afterward. Piece of shit country. Necessary? No. MJF? Yes. MJF Andrade has been a well-built feud over the last few months. And if Andrade had won a better title, like the International Championship, they just could have feuded one-on-one for that title at All In. Instead, you have MJF claiming he's the true champion, yet willing on his own accord with no prompting in the same breath to enter a number 1 contendership match. Despite then again, after that saying he's the true champion. You cannot have it both ways, bro. You're either the true champion, thumbing your nose at authority and carrying yourself as the champion, or you're upset over getting screwed out of the title and you're willing to compete for it. Ironically, earlier this week, I was curious. I was like, do I have my ducks in a row regarding the lineal AEW championship and lineal real AEW championship? And you'll remember that all stems from Punk having the real AEW championship match at All In against Samoa Joe, retaining it because they treated it like real, and then leaving the promotion. He was never defeated for the AEW title, claimed the real AEW title, never got defeated for that either. It now effectively carries the same trajectory as the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, meaning the current holder of the World Heavyweight title, the lineal AEW title, and the lineal real AEW title is Roman Reigns. So now there's Reigns, who is the lineal AEW and real AEW champion, Omega, the actual AEW champion, and MJF, the true AEW champion. Cannot make this up. On Collision, there was a trios title match. The Demand retained over the Rascals, who just got a title match 24 hours after the championship changed hands for no reason whatsoever. They really got brought over from TNA just to job. Singles, tag, trios, whatever's needed, they lose, but they keep getting title matches. It is crystal clear what Tony Khan did to TNA from a roster standpoint. And if you don't see it, then you're not paying attention. On Collision, Brodito backstage thanked Hangman Page for getting their backs the night prior. Page suggested a challenge for the trios title, and Bandito immediately came up with a name, the good, the bad, and the ugly, with Brody King asking which of them was the ugly one. That was very funny by Brody, and a great way to end the segment. All three guys are obviously among the best in AEW, including all of them previously having tag team title reigns to their credits. However, the idea that they can come together, shrug, and get a title match is the absolute height of absurdity, especially since it became immediately obvious this was going to be a transitional title reign, given the event was in Mexico. Ricochet addressed this backstage, but then he accepted the challenge anyway for reasons. Unspecified reasons. He's like, yeah, sure, we can fight for the titles. So there was a trios title match on Dynamite. Hangman and Brodito beat the Demand to win the titles in the co-main event. The challengers got a full mariachi band entrance, which only further spoiled the result. Toa Leona did a triple Samoan drop spot that was even more absurd than the the normal double spot. Got my words twisted there. The finish was both solid and stupid. It was basically a buckshot lariat aided 21-plex, except the dude who was twice the size of Bandito just stood there, crouched over. Then he stood there standing straight up, just waiting for Hangman, not trying to escape a very light grip from Bandito. Page took his head off. The crowd calmed down significantly during this match, but it did come alive for the finish. So Page has another random team championship, and he not only got it immediately after returning to the company, he was all smiles about it. Meanwhile, Ricochet has a 6-day transitional reign after winning the least important singles title in the company previously and dropping that to Jungle Jack Perry. Are we sure Ricochet is being booked better in AEW compared to WWE? Because he says, aha! Like, no doubt he's been given a longer leash and he's seen as a more valuable piece. He's on TV, frequently wrestling. His moveset has expanded a little bit. Is the booking actually better? It'll be interesting to see what trio winds up challenging these guys at All In. I presume it's going to be random Don Callis family members. I hope they surprise me. On Dynamite, the International Championship was on the line. Kyle Fletcher retained over Mike Bailey. There was a brief confrontation between them backstage on Collision. Speedball said Fletcher wouldn't be at his best until he left Don Callis' family, so he got kicked in the face. That moved into the ring for a brawl. Bailey won. This was the mid-show feature. Fletcher lawn-darted Bailey headfirst into the barricade. And frankly, I'm at the point where I get worried for Kyle's opponents when I watch his matches. He's insanely talented bell to bell. He appears so careless with some of what he executes when it comes to protecting his opponent. Speedball didn't even sell this, by the way. Bailey kicked out over Brainbuster, then delivered an Avalanche, Poison Rana, plus Ultimate Weapon for a false finish. Fletcher won with another lawn dart into the middle turnbuckle and the turnbuckle Brainbuster, which he uses so often now that, I don't know, he should never be surprised when he fails to win a match with a regular Brainbuster. This was seriously elevated by the crowd. It was definitely the match of the night. It was an A, right between 4.25 and 4.5. On Dynamite, Mystico, Chris Jericho, and Darby Allin defeated Kazuchika Okada, Kevin Knight, and Hechicero. Night on Collision issued a challenge to the three former champions. Why? Because Okada interrupted Fletcher's exit because, Callis family shit. And AEW, for some reason, had Jericho and Darby enter after Mystico, the top draw in the entire country right now. Insanity. Allin won with a coffin drop on Knight while the others had a submission locked in. Why Mystico didn't win this match, I don't know, but I understand the reason why Allen beat Knight to set up a TNT title match, and at least Hechicero did not lose again. Borderline B+ match, fun trios bout given the venue, the talent of all the competitors involved. On Collision, Brawling Birds and Hazuki beat the Minions in training in a trios match. Random babyface team, random match. Divine Dominion attacked the Birds after the bell as Athena beat on Hazuki and posed with her dead body for some reason. The big move from Dominion on stage, stereo body slams. Body slams. Real impactful, ladies. On Dynamite, Willow Nightingale and the Birds beat Mercedes Moné and Dominion in a trios match. Willow, who was already the champion, pinned Mercedes with a counter backslide. This probably should have been one of the Birds pinning one of the Dominion ladies, especially considering literal seconds after the match ended, a tag team title match graphic appeared on the big screen. So to be clear, the Birds were made a team. They wrestled a bunch of jobber tag team matches, a lot of trios matches. Then they get moved into the singles division. They don't win shit. They return on screen together. They want the tag team titles. Their only victory as a team this summer is over a couple of jobbers on my birthday, July 16th. Even in this match, which everyone knew coming in, the match would happen and then they would make the announcement on the back end. Despite knowing all of that, they didn't get the fall to be made number one contenders. We have known this match was happening since the formation of the Birds in February. Oh, you're putting together a British team. All In's going to be in London. They'll win the tag team titles in London. There is nothing wrong with that. There legitimately could not have been a lazier, less sensible way to give them the title match. Zero thought booking, which is even more frustrating because there's a legitimate reason that this trios match was created. Like Willow and the Birds teaming, Mercedes and Dominion teaming, that was told out as a storyline on TV. It was great. I praised it as like one of the 2 or 3 things AEW was doing right recently. And then rather than create reason for this tag team title match, they just shrug and go, okay, you won a trios match, but it was your partner beating their partner. Therefore, you get a title shot on the pay-per-view. That despite you not winning shit on television. This women's tag team division, they built it up for the tournament and the titles, and it looked like they were going to do something and keep these teams together, and it was going to be a really solid part of this company. They've completely imploded the entire division. There are basically 3 real teams. One of them doesn't operate together because half of it won a singles title for sentimental reasons largely. And now these 2 teams are fighting for the titles and they still couldn't give it a storyline. Or a reason for the match happening. It deserved the number 1 contendership. Horrendous.
I hate this. I hate this crap. Stop. Stop with the crap.
I also shouldn't be discussing the women this late in the show, but that was the booking. On Collision, Conglomeration backstage talked about joining the Continental Cup field and doing a live ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. They sat in an inflatable pool on stage as Rhino and Insane Clown Posse. Rhino and Insane Clown Posse. It's 2026, by the way. Dumped water on their heads. I know they're all Detroit guys, I'm just saying. We'll come back to the Continental Cup in a moment. On Collision, Chris Statlander beat a jobber in 90 seconds. On Dynamite, Persephone beat Stat. There was reason for this match as Stat stole a kendo stick Persephone tried to use last week, as thin as that might be with no other build. Thunder Rosa was in the crowd, so Persephone distracted herself, stole Thunder's title that she was holding, and then hit her with it in a terribly blocked sequence. Legitimately terrible. Stat got a visible win that did not count because the referee was knocked down. So Hikaru Shida ran in with the same title used on Rosa to hit Stat. Persephone then hit a springboard frog splash for the equivalent of a 10 count because the referee was late. Despite her awful booking in AEW, it was not surprising Persephone won this match given it was in Mexico. However, let's not forget what I just said. The only way the top wrestler in CMLL, this partner promotion, could win a non-title match was after the AEW wrestler got a visual pin and after she got interference and a belt shot with the referee knocked down. That is still dog shit booking of her, even though it's a check in the win column. Maya World and Heian ran down for Stat, and obviously Rosa factored into this, so I figured there would at least be a tag team match coming out of it, but it is extremely tough to care given everything I just explained to you. Now, in terms of the Continental Cup, they tried to glom off the end of Monday Night Raw by announcing the field on a live YouTube stream right after the show ended. The participants are 16 folks, and I just want you, I want you to hear some of these names, okay? Jon Moxley, the champion, obviously. Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, Orange Cassidy. Nigel McGuinness. Katsuyori Shibata. David Finlay, Ace Austin. Jay White. Matt Sydal. Jungle Jack Perry, Jack Doyle, Brian Cage, Hechicero, Claudio Castagnoli, Eddie Kingston, who has been wrestling on Ring of Honor because the dude can't move. But if you look at this field and you're really trying to do something with the top talent in your company, why are Kingston, Cage, Doyle, Sydal, Austin, Finlay, McGuinness, and then all three conglomeration members, but they're all talented dudes and one or two of them could be in it, but why are all three in this Continental Cup when you have so much more talent on your rosters? Now, what's unique about this, and I'm going to explain how it works in a moment, is every single match is being told to us in kayfabe that it's being booked as a blind draw. So you're going to have 8 first-round matches, all chosen out of hats. Then all the names go back into hats, and that happens again, and so on and so forth until you get to the final. The 2 semifinalists obviously will lead to the final match, and that's going to happen at AEW All In. The winner of that match will be the Continental Champion. So Jon Moxley doesn't automatically go into the final. It's not like it's a tournament to determine a number 1 contender. It's just a tournament to determine what the final match will be with the title on the line. So if Mox loses in round 3 or round 2, championship's gone, and someone else will get it. There's no outside interference, no time limits, and that's basically all you need to know. Now, I've seen people like, oh, this is very similar to the FA Cup in sports. And yes, there are elements that are similar, and that's kind of cool. And I like the idea of doing something like this theoretically, not with the field that's presented here, not when you already have the Continental Classic each year. And the Continental Classic kind of operates under the same concept of the champion is in the tournament, basically loses the title at the start. And if they want to exit with the championship, they need to win the whole tournament to remain champion. You're basically doing the same thing again here. And it's just you're now doing 2 of these every year. Why can you not just book a series of number 1 contenderships and do those, go 4-2-1, and that person fights Moxley at the show? Again, because of the names involved. The field is way too loose. You know going in that I'm just going to go through the names again. I'm going to go in reverse order. Kingston, Doyle, Austin, Cassidy, Perry, Finlay, Strong, Hechicero, Sydal, Shibata, O'Reilly, Cage, and McGuinness are not going to be number 1 contenders. They could potentially do something with Claudio and Mox. Jay White has to be the obvious one. I suppose maybe they could level up Perry thanks to Shazam Fury of the Gods. I don't think they're going to. We're almost certainly going to get Mox and White. So therefore, what does the Continental Cup accomplish? It allows AEW to throw random matches on television without really needing to think them through, other than, who's going to win and then fight in another random match that we're going to have the next round. It's lazy. It's lazy booking. It's lazy storytelling. And it's going to take up a lot of airtime when you should be spending it creating significant storylines for your biggest show of the year. That's the Silver King's issue with it. Now, we'll see how it transpires. I may feel completely different by the time it's over, but that is precisely why I have such an issue with it. And AEW is also treating it as massively secondary because I'm looking at the schedule right now. Best I can tell, for this first round, these 8 matches, 1 of them is happening on Dynamite. Excuse me, I'm sorry. 2 of them are happening on Dynamite. The other 6 are all happening on Collision, the show that books random matches. There you go. All right, that wraps up AEW this week. Like I said, I thought Grand Slam Mexico was successful. It was a really good show. It was exciting. 2 weeks in a row where they really have hit some doubles and triples and maybe a homer here or there. But largely, for a build to All In, there's a lot of stuff happening where it's just okay. I'm sure that'll be okay. I'm sure it'll be a really good match, but there's not much reason for it, or they didn't earn it or deserve it, or whatever the case might be. I'm more amped, frankly, for Andrade and MJF than I am for Omega and Ospreay, at least at this juncture. But we'll see if that changes over the coming weeks and months. Not months, weeks. until AEW All In. All right, let's exit this episode. As mentioned, we will be back Tuesday talking all things WWE. We have not one, not two, but 3 WWE episodes from this week already in the podcast feed. I mentioned the awesome breakdown from Tuesday, but we also have SummerSlam Instant Analysis podcast from the weekend. Make sure you don't miss those. We will be back, as I said, next Tuesday, talking WWE next Thursday, NXT, and AEW. On the way out, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter. And Blue Sky, you get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. On YouTube, you can listen to the show, watch full-length video interviews, hit the link in our profile, join our free Slack channel, talk with other Getting Overheads, subscribe to the podcast, and so much more. Find us on social media at Getting Overcast, and please remember,
It's all about the five.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review if you do. We will read it live right here on the show. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling Podcast. This is the Silver King Adam Silverstein signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.